Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio, where we provide actionable health information on a week-to-week basis that can help you improve your life. Feel free, head over to justinhealth.com, where we have various opt-in video series on more in-depth health topics such as female hormones, thyroid, and gut health. Also, while you're there, feel free and schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or my colleagues. We're available worldwide to provide natural health support for any of your major health issues. Again, welcome to the podcast and enjoy the show. And we are live. It's Dr. Justin Marcagiani in the house here with Evan Brand. Evan, how are we doing today, my friend?
Doing awesome. Ready to dive in, have some fun together. So you and I, we don't really market ourselves as like fertility doctors, fertility practitioners, anything like that. But we've both, between us, had many successful, healthy babies, not only in our own family, but that our clients have had. And it's interesting because fertility really comes as a side effect of getting healthy. And so that's the first big key point of today. When you look at the fertility industry, you've got the in vitro fertilization, you've got all these shots, all these different drugs. They're not really addressing root cause in most cases. Most cases, they're just trying to come in and just find a way to sort of short circuit or hijack the circuitry to make a baby happen. But we would argue there's a better way, which is get someone healthy. And I was looking into, I'm doing a mold presentation, and I was looking into some research on mycotoxins. And something that you and I test for via urine are various mycotoxins. And there's one in particular called zearalenone, Z like zebra, zearalenone.
Yep.
And this is a highly, highly, highly estrogenic mycotoxin, far more estrogenic than soy. And people freak out about soy, and they should, but nobody freaks out about zearalenone. And that's really, to me, the bigger issue. And so we have a paper here that we found called Maternal Mycotoxin Exposure and Adverse Pregnancy Outcomes. And there's many, many papers on this. This was just a review of them. And it was talking about the different mycotoxins. So anything from aflatoxin to ochratoxin to fusarium-based toxins. And here's what can happen. Hypertensive emergencies in pregnancy, neural tube defects, increased risk of preterm birth and late-term miscarriage, neonatal jaundice, impaired fetal growth, and, just straight infertility. So when we see women that are infertile, I just look at some of the friends I had from high school and college, and many of them have had issues with fertility. Some of them did IVF. Some of them had miscarriages. Some of them had preterm birth. I had a friend actually just have a baby, and their baby showed up 6 weeks early. It's like, wow, what does her mold test look like? So this is a really, really big piece of the puzzle that I think people are missing. And we're inside all the time, right? We're on technology. So we're inside a lot more than we used to in the farmer days. And so now we're breathing this stuff in all day, whereas before it maybe would have only happened when you were sleeping in the farmhouse, but during the day you're out on the farm.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yep, 100%. The zearalenone mycotoxin is that's made by the fusarium fungi. So it's a mycotoxin actually made by that level of mold, and it's in the food and it's in the animal feed, and that animal feed is designed to fatten those animals up. So I have one kind of study here. It's called zearalenone. It's all the study is called by Science Direct, and it's looking at the absorption of zearalenone on body weight and how it increased the size of the pigs 15 to 25 kilograms, and basically it increased body weight. And then one of the big things they found with zearalenone in reproductive tissue, it actually decreased fertility. It's one of the side effects of this study. I'll pull up the exact study on screen here in a minute. I have it up here in front. I'll find the exact paragraph on there and I'll show it to y'all. But mold toxins is going to be one of the big conversations here with fertility. Now, we can plug that into xenoestrogens and plastics. We could potentially plug it into pesticides as well, which are going to be found in food. We can plug it into growth hormones in milk and dairy and hormones in animal products. The problem is it's all a hormonal stress load. It's not just one thing. So when you look at different studies on one topics, on one thing, on one toxin, on one hormone, on one mold, it may not be enough in one person or globally to pop up as an issue. Here we're finding studies on it off the bat, but we know it's all about your stress load. And so I want to get people's mindsets kind of around that stress, that metaphorical stress bucket, and all of these different toxins, whether it's mold or pesticides or hormones or plastic type of hormones, they're all adding into that big stress bucket. And of course, fertility is going to be significantly impacted by that.
Yep, well said. Here's something crazy too. It's a little bit related. You and I were looking at this a little bit ago. The onset of puberty is massively dropping. So why am I bringing up puberty? Well, because this is connected into hormones and what's happening with hormones. So in 1860, and you had a graph of this that was really cool too, but in 1860, the average age of onset of puberty in girls was 16.6 years. So over 16 years old, 16 and a half years, 1860, that's puberty. In 2010, it is now 10 and a half years old. That is insane. And that's probably the most, I mean, I can guarantee you that's the most rapid change in puberty age in human history. And it all
absolutely.
happened in the last, what's that, about 100, 150, 170 years.
That's insane, right? Isn't that crazy? Oh. I'll pull that graph up here for everyone to see here so you guys can see it. I think that's really important to visualize.
Yeah, now while you're doing that, they're just talking here, just like you said, there's this stress bucket. So endocrine disruptors, various chemicals in the environment acting on hormones, widespread industrial and pharmaceutical pollutants. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. Diet that's increasingly high in sugar and fats, declining physical activity. Yeah, here's the graph. So people listening, you're not going to get to see this, but the graph is pretty nuts.
Yeah, so you can see here the y-axis, the up and down axis, so you can see the age, right, 16 to 15, and then you can see the x-axis is time. So as we go from the 1860s up to current day, you can see we kind of flat plateau between, 13-ish for puberty age versus, 15 to 16, and a lot of that has to be influenced due to mold toxins in some. So here's one article here that Evan talked about here, maternal mycotoxins. And again, mycotoxins are toxins produced by the mold. So a lot of times, it's not necessarily the mold that's causing the problem, it's the toxins produced by the mold. So it's good to look and test for mold, but also test maybe for the urinary mycotoxins as well. But you can see exposure and adverse pregnancy outcomes. And this is a very interesting study talking about increase in puberty, increasing in puberty age, like I mentioned, also fertility, right? Preterm birth, late miscarriage, inclusion of some evidence that exposure to mycotoxins during pregnancy may have detrimental effects on pregnancy outcomes. Now, of course, there's limited studies, right? No one makes a whole bunch of money studying this kind of stuff, but we know it's there, and there's some data already on it. And we also have a lot of common sense. We know if something's a toxin and can affect the hormones, that it makes sense why that may be affected.
Yeah, and I've seen several women who, going through a protocol, spontaneously get pregnant, which is really cool. Now, some of these women came to me with the intention of getting pregnant. They're like, hey, I've been told a fertility specialist, they're unable to help me. Can you help? And I'll say, yes, probably so. And then some of these women just had spontaneous pregnancies as an accident because they thought they were infertile. They thought they can't get pregnant. We put them on a protocol, and then all of a sudden they get pregnant. So let's go into some of the action steps. I mean, what are we doing for these people? I think it's important to know about what we discuss. Zearalenone, it's bad news, affects hormones, affects fertility, affects puberty. But what do you do about it? So as you mentioned, number one, we're going to be testing the environment. So using
hold on one
dishes.
thing. I want to go a little bit deeper into what you just said, because we talked about some of these mold toxins in fertility. Right, we have this one study here, which we already mentioned, which is maternal mycotoxin exposures and adverse pregnancy outcome, which is a new study, right? Mycotoxin research, May 2020. That's important, and this is actually on humans. There's lots of studies on zearalenone. That's how I'm pronouncing it. Good. In farm animals, because it's been used in farm settings to fatten animals up for many years. It's in the feed. So there's a lot of data on this, and that's important. So we know, for instance, studies on in vitro effects allow to understand the mechanism of action, right? In vivo means the actual animals, and they see an impairment of semen quality and female reproductive function. So we talk about fertility, right? Most people think of fertility as women, right? But we know it can affect men as well, and it takes two to tango, right? And zearalenone could be a factor responsible for reproductive failure in farm animals. And so if you go to the reproductive MD, are they going to be testing you if you're having issues with pregnancy for mold toxins? Probably not. And look here. One study here on zearalenone here, if you look here on the bottom part, So zearalenone is a non-steroidal estrogenic mycotoxin. It's produced by several species of the Fusarium fungi, okay? So it's produced by this Fusarium fungus. It's a mycotoxin. And you can see here, it's low in grain content, but it's the storage of a lot of the grain where the moisture is greater than 30 to 40% where this mold and fungus is produced, okay? And then right here in this one part, typical clinical signs are hyperestrogenism, which explains the increase in puberty age or the decrease in puberty age, right? More hormones sooner in life increases puberty. Swelling of the vulva, mammary gland, hyperplasia, secretions, prolonged uterus, increase in pseudo-pregnancy, infertility, decreased libido, complications of rectal prolapses, stillbirth, small litter, right? So we know it has a lot of fertility issues, and a lot of the studies first tend to happen in animals. So it's good to know the data here in animals as well as some of the human stuff here we talked about earlier.
Yeah,
Any comments on that for zearalenone?
Yeah, the whole thing's crazy. I mean, it's hard to believe they would use this in the feed. I mean, like you said, maybe not intentionally, but it's kind of a byproduct of storing grain in a moist thing. I mean, it's like you'd have to have a dehumidifier on your grain, or how about you just pasture your animals so you don't need to feed them moldy grain? How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you one story I had with Dave Asprey. He told me, and I can't find the data on this, but they would use zearalenone pellets. And they would put the pellet in the cow's ear, and that was enough to cause this increased fat absorption because those hormones were so concentrated. They were going into, obviously, the blood supply via the ear, and it was causing the animals to get fatter. And, of course, farmers, sell their animals based off of weight. So we know that zearalenone may even be used in a way outside of just incidentally in the feed. We know it may just be there to fatten them up as well.
I've heard that too. I can't find anything on it, but if any old school farmers are putting zearalenone pellets in your cow's ears, let us know. Tell us about it. Give us the story on it because we'd like to share this stuff.
Yeah, I know it's totally interesting. I believe there's something to it. I believe someone like Asprey wouldn't say that unless he had some actual good info on that. But very interesting. So off the bat, we have mold toxins. We talked about that, and that's important. Now, again, in humans, you could get mold toxins from eating crappy grains and crappy foods. So eating foods that are going to have lower mycotoxin counts and to be important. So, more from vegetables, more from fruits, more from high-quality, fresh, pasture-fed animal products, good high-quality fats. That's going to decrease a lot of your mold and mycotoxin and zearalenone load right there out of the gates. Okay. And then the next component is going to be making sure your house isn't moldy. So if you have a history of water damage or flooding, you want to make sure you go back and listen to our podcast on looking at and dealing with mold and mycotoxins in your home. But of course, any history of water damage or any leaks, you want to at least, or any visible mold, you want to at least get a really good high quality immunolytics plate test that looks at the mold as well as mold toxins. I've had some patients that have ordered the plates and just said, well, I'm going to let it culture and just look at it myself. It's like, well, you want to send it to the lab because you want to know what the mold species is and if there's any mycotoxins associated with that mold species. Because you may look at it and see the culture, right? But you may not know if it's a friendly mold or not. So you want to know if is it a mold that's from the environment and the soil, or is it something that's actually from water damage type of mold species? That's important to know.
Yeah, on a retest, it's probably fine to do the self-test because you can look and just see that
compare.
Hopefully no colonies show up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, on the initial, I tell people the same. Yeah, definitely, because also too, we rarely find that the house correlates to the mycotoxin in someone's urine. That's pretty interesting. So that tells us most people are sick from a previous exposure. But in a few cases, we have found where the molds in someone's house and the mycotoxins those would produce, for example, aspergillus and penicillium producing things like ochratoxin, mycophenolic acid, we'll then look at the house and see, oh yeah, you've got a bunch of aspergillus growing, that matches up to the urine. So it's cool to see, but it's not necessary to get someone better.
Yeah, I look at it just a tiny bit differently. Like if I see someone with a lot of mold, like weird kind of neurological symptoms, I always do the foundational things first because a lot of times that can move the needle without having to go into any crazy mold protocols off the bat. But then if I see their home is very high in mold as well, it's easy. Sometimes it's easier to decrease the exposure than to accelerate detoxification, especially if their gut's not working well. So then there may be some easy, simple strategies like let's just get a high quality air filter. Let's maybe get like a citrus-based anti-mold candle. If there's any active leaks, let's get someone in there that can work on the remediation process, at least patch the leak or decrease humidity in the area. We can work on a couple of those things, and that can move the needle a lot.
Yep. Let's go into binders. So this is where the magic happens. Like you said, you may need to do some work on the gut first. We may come in and help support the adrenals, because detoxification, it is work and it's not easy, and you can get worse by trying to make yourself better. And I've certainly overdone it on binders. I've certainly overdone it with glutathione and had a bad headache for a long time. So that wasn't fun. So the good news is you can pull this stuff out of the body. And in regards to zearalenone, some of the most effective binders are going to be your clays. Now, charcoal can help a little bit. So we often use like a broad spectrum. You can come in and spot treat. And there are certain people that say you need to spot treat mold toxins, meaning you need to use charcoal for ochratoxin, you need to use zeolite clay for zearalenone. But the truth is, a lot of people are not showing up with the true amount of mycotoxins on their first urine sample, meaning you may just show up with ochratoxin, but you also may have zearalenone. But if you're a bad detoxifier, you may not be urinating out all of those toxins. Therefore, I do kind of spot treat, if you will, but I still like to use broad spectrum, full spectrum binders just because of this issue. Because what will happen is on a retest, maybe we took care of one toxin and then a new one shows up. We're like, well, crap, we could have been addressing the other mycotoxin. Say we were just using charcoal for ochratoxin. We could have been using a little bit of zeolite clay as well, and that would have took care of the zearalenone. But boom, now zearalenone shows up on the retest. Now we've got a whole new mycotoxin to focus on. So long story short, full spectrum, broad spectrum, and multiple binders are what we like to use. And then I'm a huge fan of the micronized chlorella. There's a couple brands we use. They have a liquid chlorella. That can be amazing. There are some tablets of broken cell wall chlorella. That can be awesome for heavy metals as well. And then sweating. I mean, I tell you, I feel much, much more clarity mentally right after I get out of the sauna. You can have like a detox Herx reaction from a sauna as well. But if you're healthy enough and you're supporting adrenals, you're doing electrolytes, to me, a sauna is a game changer. And even just a hot bath, if you don't have access to a sauna, even if you just get hot enough to sweat in the tub, that may be a little too hard on someone if you're weak adrenally, like your constitution is weak. Or if you have blood pressure issues, a hot bath may make you feel bad. But if you can do it and you can sweat, it's free. Compared to a sauna may cost you $1,000 minimum.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can always add in some, really good magnesium salts like Epsom salts, which can be very helpful and relaxing for you as well. So the problem is a lot of the binders that we may add in, or if it's necessary to add them in, they could also decrease or cause bowel motility issues. So if you already have a lot of bowel issues, this is why it's so important that we kind of deal with the hierarchy. And a lot of times the gut needs to be fully addressed and working so we can have good detoxification, because the gut is so important, hepatobiliary wise, liver, gallbladder. It dumps a lot of those bile and toxins that are mixed in with the liver and the gallbladder back into the intestines, and it has to move out. And so we give maybe things like Evan mentioned, various pectins or activated charcoals or clays or fulvic minerals to bind up a lot of these things. But if we have really slow motility, it could really jack up with our absorption of nutrition and a reabsorption of other toxins. We want to make sure our bowels are still moving. So some people may not be able to handle that. And also, you kind of alluded to getting a false negative on some of these urinary mold tests. That's why it's very important that you probably do 1 to 2 weeks worth of glutathione ahead of a urinary mold test to make sure we're adequately dumping it. Because people, their detoxification may be so weak, they may not be dumping it. They may look to that mold test, hey, look, I'm good, but you may not be. So I do a week or two, and I tell patients that if you are really feeling crappy during that loading phase, you probably have some level of toxins. It may not just be mold. It could be other pesticides or metals or other things in the environment you're dumping. But it's always good to do that load period. And if you feel too sick or just too icky during that time frame, feeling lethargic, malaise, achy, brain foggy, moody, it's probably not the right time to do any testing yet. Maybe you want to wait a little bit longer, get things moving better, and test the home, see what's happening in the home, and wait a little bit more till everything's working better on the detoxification side. Just getting your diet better, decreasing your inflammation, improving your nutrient density. Surprisingly, that actually moves the needle a lot. And then you can always add in some gentle sweating protocols like Evan mentioned as well.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this for years, this idea that when people figure out there's something going on, they want to take care of it immediately. Remember, we've done shows on parasites, and we talk about how as soon as you see parasites show up, the gut is the gut feeling is, oh my God, get this out of me. And you and I have kind of discussed that you do want to do things in the correct order. And I would agree that happens with this toxicity issue as well. So if we're working with a mom who's had infertility problems or, issues with pregnancy, and we want to help increase her health, we still are going to focus on the gut, because there's a right place and a right time. And if you're really weak, you're really sick, and then you try to go straight into a detox protocol, you could go the wrong direction. And trust me, I want this stuff out of you as fast as you want it out of you, but there is a right place and a right time. So we're still going to be doing other testing, like looking at stool to try to investigate these gut infections. You mentioned some of the reabsorption of toxins too. That's a big problem if you have bacterial overgrowth because of this whole beta-glucuronidase issue that we see. And so there may need to be a month or two of just fixing the gut and fixing the enzyme production before we even get into detox. So don't rush, don't rush, don't rush. That's the whole message here. And can you do this on your own? That's a question we get a lot. Well, can I just go online, go on Amazon, buy a bottle of charcoal and be done with this? I would argue no. I will speak for Justin and say he would say no as well, because we've done this 1,000+ times, and we know that if you're just trying to detox and you're not addressing everything else, you may send yourself backwards. What does that mean? Well, it means if you're overwhelming your system. So like when I took charcoal, I've got some right here on my desk. I thought, well, I feel so good on 4 capsules a day. I'm going to go up to 8 capsules a day. And I didn't do anything in regards to my gut, my liver, adrenals, and I crashed hard. I had way too much charcoal. I was like, whoa, you can't have too much of a good thing. So that's why I would argue it's better to have a practitioner kind of prep your body and build up the other pillars of health before you go into the detox pillar. Detox is sexy, right? Like detox tea and all of this. It's kind of a trendy thing to do, but people don't have the disclaimer that you need to be ready. You need to have the constitutional strength to do this.
110%. I totally agree. Sometimes with detoxification, slow and steady is the better way to deal with the issues, especially if a lot of these issues came slow and steady. If they came over decades, then it makes sense. If it, a little bit more of a short-term kind of toxic issue, you could probably hit it a little bit faster and harder, especially if you're younger and more healthy. That totally makes sense. So when we talk about, fertility and mold, I know a lot of women out there are going to be like, oh man, I knew it. It's mold. Maybe, maybe not. So I just want to make sure anytime we talk about a specific issue and we connect it to a thing like fertility, that resonates with women, right? Like if you have fertility issues, I know it's a very stressful thing for women that want to get pregnant and they can't. It's very, very stressful. And so you want to look at the goal of pregnancy holistically. So you always want to look at diet and nutrient density and all of the building blocks in your food and being able to digest those foods adequately as core foundational. You want to be able to look at sleep and high quality water. You want to be able to look at mitigating toxins, whether it's mold in your food, whether it's eating crummy, moldy grains, whether it's consuming a lot of hormones or pesticides. You want to look at those things as foundational, and then we can look at the hormones. We can look at your luteal phase hormone levels. We can look at your adrenals. We can look at thyroid, autoimmune, gut permeability, gut infections, and then we can eventually wake our way to detoxification and mold levels down the road. There's an order of operations. So just kind of look at things as what's going to give you the best bang for your buck. I always tell my patients, if you're going bowling, right, and it's your first roll, you're not trying to hit the outside left pin. You're trying to hit the pin right in the middle. Why? Hit the pin in the middle and knocks everything else down. So it's that's how we want to look at this. And mold may be a pin that's off to the right or left with some people. Some people, it may be the center pin, right? But we always go with that center pin, and that's always going to be the foundational things to start, and then we build on that as we go.
Nice. Bringing out the bowling analogy. That's a new one. I like it. That's awesome.
Excellent.
So for men, men listening too, they're like, well, this is all about her. Nope. Did you hear the part about the reduction in sperm quality? So men, you are not exempt. I get frustrated with these fertility practitioners that people have seen before they come to me, because why is the male not on this phone call? Like, if this is so important, why is the male not here? What is he doing? And so we know just the mold toxin, but anything else in regards to the diet, the lifestyle, the gut, that all affects male fertility as well. And I think this is really the missing piece. The women take all the blame, the emotional blame, the physical. It's a big issue for them to not have fertility. And so the men are just sitting back with their arms crossed like, oh, poor you. But they got to get involved too. And so there may be a male protocol that we're implementing as well. A lot of the foundational nutrients for women, we're doing prenatals, omegas, vitamin D, vitamin K, possibly some trace minerals, enzymes, electrolytes, liver support. Did I say adrenal support already? Adrenals. So those are some of the pieces that we're implementing. And good news is a lot of this stuff we're talking about, it is reversible. Now, if you're age 50, I've had some women literally age 50, 52 coming to me because they want to have babies. I'm like, you're 52. I'm going to help you get healthy, but I'm not signing in blood. You're going to have a baby at age 52. Like, this is, wow. So, I think there is a cutoff, but, if you're 40 listening to this and you've had issues, I think you still have time.
Absolutely. So, my wife, we had our first child. She was 41 and then 43. We had no problem getting pregnant for the most part. We had a little bit of a fertility snafu in the beginning because she had a fibroid that was kind of embedded in the uterine lining. We didn't know about it and was just sucking a lot of blood flow. So I always recommend patients that have fertility goals just to get a good general fertility workup to make sure there's no ovarian tube or fallopian tube blockages, no weird fibroids or anything weird, endometriosis that could be affecting fertility, because those things are pretty easy to remove if we have to surgically. Of course, there's natural ways to do it, but it takes time, right? So if you're under a fertility window and you don't have years to help these things reabsorb on their own, sometimes a surgical intervention could be helpful when the clock is ticking. But guys, it's pretty easy to rule out guys. We can do a high quality sperm test. We can look at motility, how the sperm are moving, what percent's moving forward, what percent's not moving, what percent's moving backwards. We can look at shape, which is morphology. We can also look at overall sperm count. So sperm count cutoff, I think the average sperm count for guys is around 20 million. We want at least 50 million. So we can look at that. And there's also expanded sperm panels we'll look at. We'll look at DNA damage. We'll look at oxidative stress as well. Now, the key thing with guys is going to be just making sure insulin resistance, toxins are under control, maybe a little bit of lifting, some resistance training, good quality organic food, right? Enough protein, enough fat. That tends to be enough for most guys. Adequate selenium and zinc, right? Adequate levels of good amino acids like arginine. That tends to be enough to really support good, healthy sperm count where it's going to be high enough. We can also add in things like CoQ10 and carnitine, like I mentioned, to support it extra. So it's pretty easy to rule guys out in the beginning. Okay, good. Hey, we're at an adequate level. Great. Oh, we're not. Let's look at DNA damage. And then we can always then look at toxin load, or if a lot of the guys are eating conventional standard American or eating a lot of GMOs, we can tweak a lot of that. We can run a specific intracellular nutrient panel to look deeper at the nutrients and work on spot treating those on top of a good diet as well. But that's essential. I like to get that. If fertility is a goal, I like to get the guy ruled out right away in the beginning.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that's where, like we said, good multi comes in, maybe some adaptogens too, because some of the herbs we use, they do have some supportive effects on hormone levels with men, regulating testosterone, estrogen levels. Some of the detox support may help in regards to estrogen if men have had a toxin issue and they've got, breast tissue, they've got gyno, maybe they've done steroids. There are some issues that kind of throw a wrench in the gears, but yeah, in general, you definitely make it sound like it's much easier for men.
Yeah, out of the gates, women's hormones are just so much more delicate. They're like a beautiful symphony, and men's are kind of like a foghorn, as I've always said. And with a symphony, if you just have the strings off or the percussion instruments off, that symphony can turn to noise pretty fast. So we want to make sure that that's fully dialed in. And we want to look at the toxic load. So really important if you women are listening and you want to dive in deeper and with fertility goals kind of being there, or even energy or mood goals being there too, right? I recommend clicking down below. You can schedule with Evan at evanbrand.com. You can also schedule with Dr. J and myself at justinhealth.com. We're here to help you, here to serve, here to educate. We recommend taking advantage of all the low-hanging fruit. We try to provide tons of low-hanging fruit in this day and age. Everyone has access to it based on, the internet and everyone having these smartphones that are so cheap now. It's great. So everyone can kind of get access to a lot of this great intel and start applying it. And then if you want to dive in deeper, if you want to stop guessing and start testing and figure out what's happening under the hood, that's where I really urge you all to reach out. And if you're enjoying the content, please refer us to friends and family and shoot over a podcast. The best way you can thank us for all that we've done is just kind of send the content to your family and friends so they can get healthier. Evan, anything else you want to say, man?
Yeah, that's all I want for Christmas is for everyone listening to share the podcast with your friends, your family. Let's make 2021 an even better, healthier year, less stress, less worry, more health, more vitality. It's all possible We try to give you guys action steps every time. And this stuff is free. I mean, it's a thankless job. So the best way you can thank us sharing is caring. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. You guys have a phenomenal holiday season and a very Merry Christmas. We'll talk soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com.